Hi, Mr. Fix again. Just wanted to give you an update on what I've been working on. I been away most of the weekend, but I actually pulled a couple of all-nighters and got all these wires hooked up. I got the thing back together again. I've been listening to a lot of the videos on YouTube and a lot of stuff that was written. I want to thank Katie Rose. Those videos were very helpful. They really were. I thought a lot of the pointers on how to make the energy work was just priceless. And then AG 1969, that UFO flick today. Basically, the components inside the flying saucer, the way they were put together, configured, and everything like that, gave me a good idea. There's been a consensus, I would say, amongst all of these, alleged 0 point, whether it be a flying saucer, anti-gravity generator, ways of making these things work, that I'm seeing a lot of common elements, okay? And even Peter Linderman and others will say there's literally hundreds of ways of doing this, okay? So pretty much you got to pick one. Now, something that I had noticed just about a month ago, I started looking back at the quantum energy generator that hit, the internet about a year ago. It was posted all over Dots. And to this point, 1 year later, nobody's been able to close the loop to get the drive motor to run off the generator. Now, they can figure out how much current's going into the motor. Apparently, it's about 1,000 watts. And then they can figure out how much is coming out in the process of lighting light bulbs. And that's about 10,000 watts. What I've come to realize is it's two different kinds of electricity. They're not compatible. The so-called cold electricity or radiant electricity that Tesla worked with is a real, that is a reality. But in frequency and wave, the kind of wave that it's configured, regular electronics don't work with it. So you can't just put like a three-phase electric motor. Most of these motors are just plugged into the wall to fire it up, and it's not working. I've seen a whole bunch of videos now on how to make that radiant energy, and they use as a demonstration that like light bulbs and things along those lines, and that's all fascinating stuff. But then you can't close the loop with a light bulb either, unless you want to put a whole bunch of them in some solar cells. But anyway, that's not where I want to go with this. Now, the design of the rig that I'm looking at, originally I had thought that along the lines of a lensless generator. What I'm starting to think now is there's a lot of components on this. There's, I'll get you the name, but maybe post some pictures. But some town in Eastern Europe has had some kind of machine with the round wheel and these condensers and spark gap, and it's been running the town now for 20 years or something like that. And they let it go, and nobody's allowed to know how it works, and that kind of thing. But Peter Lindemann did a really nice step-by-step going through all of the components on it. There were a couple of cans. Nobody's allowed to look inside. So some of this we have to extrapolate. Although I think I've gotten some ideas just from watching some other ones and going through Tesla's work. Okay. So what I'm thinking, I actually went and looked at the pictures of what I started with over a year ago and realized that you really need to put the radiant energy into the inner coils to make this work, and that what that whole thing is actually a converter. It's a radiant energy converter on the that European model where they've got coming out of the high voltage capacitors. The first place it goes is to windings around magnets. Now, the Peter Linneman theorized that's to get it back to, regular electricity. Well, that's exactly what I've got. There's magnets inside all 16 of my coils. But then with them all phased, you know, the way it's designed is it brings it back to a, regular alternating current as opposed to radiant energy, which is essentially pulsed DC in a wavelength that doesn't work. I know diodes don't work with it. It'll just jump the gaps. Um, Ohm's law doesn't apply. The electricity appears to work fine with dead shorts in the system. So a lot of electrical engineering, when you start looking at schematics as to how some of this is wired, it just makes no sense at all. Well, that's because the electricity isn't performing in the same way regular electricity would. So anyway, let me show you my update because I think this is pretty neat. I told you last time in the post that I had what was basically looked like an explosion in a spaghetti factory. Well, this is what I'm up to now. Turn it this way. Okay, we got 16 coils mounted now. Okay, and for lack of a better term, I'm calling this the front. We've got the wheel in there with the neodymium. I've got it set up now that so it can still be taken apart. The original model that I looked at had the wires running from one side to the other with a fairly unique setup. I've got the bolts that hold the housing together actually as conductors. So it goes through one side and then the circuit continues on the other side very nicely. So the idea being that these are all supposed to be, the same coil, just running straight through, and you're breaking the flux in between. But I think what you're actually doing is breaking the radiant energy itself. So what I have done is, I've said all these red wires are the secondaries or low voltage. Now, low voltage on that model is supposed to be about 1,000 volts. I'll tell you what I wind up with, but it was making absolutely outrageous claims. This thing was supposed to put out 5,000 watts per set for a total, when you add it all up, it was like 400 kilowatts altogether. And you could run a whole neighborhood off that. That's just ridiculous. But if I can get if I can get 5 out of the whole thing, hey, that's happy. Okay, so what I've done is all of these screws, I couldn't figure out the mounting strips. They would have to be too integrated into the system. So I've got all of the inner coils mounted now and tested, and I don't know if you can actually see the wires. This is like, they're so fine, but I'll bring in on a zoom. There, actually can make them out. And then I'll show you some of the rest of the system. Okay, that's basically the motor, the drive. Still got the fan belt on it. That's the basic idea. I can turn it around. This is actually the drive battery on the back. I literally took it off my lawnmower. It's one of those pull start push mowers that has a push button to start it. And the battery was just so neat because it fit right in there. Okay, so what we've got basically is every other coil is wired together in parallel. No, series. That's right. So this is a series circuit, and then the other one is a series circuit. And that corresponds with whatever point on the wheel, comes around. There's only 4 spots on the wheel. So that's where I figure you get your alternating current from. Now, as best as I can tell, especially after Katie Rose's contribution, is they said that these fine coils are radiant. They need a very long circuit. So I'm doing, to start with, the bifolars. I'm sending the power basically in one, which is one loop, and then it jumps to the next one and then comes out the other side. So it'll be running around one coil and then back out and then run around the other coil. And Tesla was the one that figured out that bipolar coils actually generate more electricity, or they're way more efficient. I might even do a pancake coil as part of this. Now, over the next couple of days, I'm going to figure out the polarity of these and then start wiring these as a series circuit. And there'll be two circuits basically, for each phase. These are going to be my spark gap. If you look in very carefully, you'll be able to see that in the wheel itself, I've put some brass fittings. You can see them going around, and you've got one that lines up with the top as it goes by, and then you got the next one lines up with the bottom one as it goes by. Okay, so I plan on putting about all my radiant energy into both of these. When it gets out to the other side, there's a corresponding set, and what comes out of the other side, I don't think direction matters much, but I'll wire one to, one set of coils, and then the other to the other set of coils. All right, because we're talking two separate circuits. So I'm actually close to having this whole thing wired up. Then all I got to do is feed radiant energy into it. That's going to be a whole different can of worms. Now, one of the best systems that I saw set up with, I've seen one with a TV flyback transformer. I've got a couple of those. Another one with a oil burner ignition, which I know is a 10,000 volts. And I haven't seen one with a car coil, but I'm not blowing that one off yet. I think I'm going to start with that. If I have to boost it up, I will. Now, one real interesting thing was that some people use these things called doorknob capacitors. Another one used what they call Linden jars, which he actually filled the jar with salt water, put some oil on top, put a wire right down into the water, wrapped the outside with foil, and that was basically his capacitor. So I got myself a mash set. From what I can see, you put one on the what you would think positive and one on the negative of the radiant energy. You got to make a spark gap with magnets on both sides, so that's supposed to keep that spark so it blows out instantly and there's no back feed. That was something Tesla figured out to keep the energy going in one direction. This doesn't work if there's any feedback in the system. So I'm hoping these coils, I'm not exactly sure what the EMF or the back pulse is going to do with the high voltage, but hopefully I can just keep hammering it in and it gets to the next phase. So I've got the whole thing rigged so the wheel comes apart. I can take it out and all that stuff. And getting the clearances on this, that's kind of tight, I'll tell you. Right now, you can see my wheel going around. There's literally a half-inch gap between the two housings, and the rotor's 3/8 thick. So I've got about a 1/16 of an inch on each side, and the wheel's just a little bit warped. So sometimes it touches, but if I get it up to speed, it doesn't touch. I think centrifugal force actually flattens it out. So I'm going to go with that for now. But this is what I was saying. There are some engineering issues that I'm going to have to address down the road. I didn't know whether to make this thing out of a much more rigid material, but it breaks real easy. And then the Lexan is actually a little softer. It's shatterproof, but it's got a little flex. I think the biggest thing is what I wind up is these are very strong magnets, and the neodymium magnet powder actually gets sucked into the magnet. So when it's slow, sometimes as it passes through the magnet, if it's just a little bit off to one side or the other, boom, it hits the magnet. It gets sucked right into it. So that might not actually be an issue, though when I get it up to speed. Anyway, just wanted to show you what I'm up to, and thank you for your research. Keep it coming, all right? You post a video, I listen to it while I'm, stripping wires and connecting them all together, and I've got a whole bunch more to go, all right? So have a good week. and keep connecting those dots. That's what I'm doing. Take care. Bye bye.